Everyone, and welcome to Optimise Et al. My name is Bettool Jabur, and joining me today is Professor Angela Lee and Dr. Mohammed Rana. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us on this special podcast where we're going to be talking about diversity and everything to do with it. But first of all, let's just have a bit of an introduction from yourself, Professor Angela.
So I'm the Associate Dean for Research at the University College for State Management. And I'm absolutely passionate about diversity and inclusion in the built environment. I don't want to talk too much in detail, but, we're underrepresented. So quite simply, a lot of my research has been dedicated in recent years to this area. I've also done a lot of research in performance management, process management, design management, all related to the built environment. But today here, I'm really pleased to be invited to talk about this really important subject. So lovely to be here.
Thank you very much. And Professor Angela, we go back from university days. You was our program director back then. And it's great to see that you've kind of escalated and gone even higher within the field. So it's an absolute pleasure for me to have you on this particular program today. And you brought along Dr. Mohammed Rana, who has done a lot of research within this area. Can you just give us a bit of an introduction about yourself, please, Dr. Mohammed?
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Mohammed Rana. I am a lecturer at University College of State Management, and Angela is my boss. Yes, I'm a mechanical engineer by profession, and then went into project management, and then I ended up here in gender equality. So last year we have been lucky in receiving 5 projects on gender equality, although we have been working on it previously in different capacities, but right now our focus has been on equality, diversity, gender equality more recently.
For me, I've been absolutely passionate about this area. Obviously, being Chinese, being a female, I tick a number of different boxes where, there have been incidences, not necessarily major in my personal experience, but of, you felt like discriminated against for particular ways. And obviously seeing it a lot with my other colleagues as well. It's an area that I'm really, really passionate in. We are underrepresented in this industry as a female, as someone from an ethnic background. And, I'm here to spearhead the whole to say, why don't more females, more people from different backgrounds, more disabled people join our industry is really valuable and rewarding. And on the other hand, it's here to me to raise the alarm to say that there are issues that need to be improved and addressed. So I come from both sides, but it's a really great, rewarding industry to get in. And, we are doing a lot better than we were doing. And I'm sure in many years' time is that we are going to be a lot more equal and inclusive as an industry.
Yeah, and we can see that kind of growing. I mean, from when I graduated, I can see that there are more females now within the industry, and more people of kind of different backgrounds as well joining together. But we'll see throughout the podcast if that's actually true on the reflection of the results that you've had from some of the studies that you've gone through. But first of all, for the listeners and for me, what exactly is diversity? We hear about it in the workplace, but what does it actually mean if we had the definition?
That's quite hard to pinpoint, so I'll try and have a go first. So diverse workforce to me is more productive and more imaginative. So different people from different backgrounds can bring different skills and needs into the built environment. And embracing diversity will really allow new ways of thinking and new ways of working and approaching the challenges that we face today. And it really can accelerate growth and economic development in our industry. We're faced by real big challenges in the built environment. And I think that opening up, encouraging more different people from diverse backgrounds into our industry will only be able to address these problems. Now, how do we address productivity against the mental health crisis which is growing in the UK? How do you look at innovation against rising costs, particularly from materials and labour costs? How do we address these challenges? Even sustainability and urbanisation, the need to grow and urbanise, but whilst trying to be more cognizant of the environment. There's lots of these challenges. So we are going to have to look at these and embrace them from a different way. And I think having a more diverse workforce will help to address these in a much better way.
Yeah. So what I take away from that is, diverse meaning, from difference, there's a difference there within the different either individuals or the way that we work or what we look at. You spoke about lots of things there. Sustainability, there's things like technology, there's, people, there's backgrounds, there's so much that we can touch on. But to where's the limit? Do we limit this, or is it limitless because we want to be a bit more diverse? I don't know. Dr. Mohammed Rana, what do you think? Do you want to add anything else to what Professor Angela has just told us there?
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I like how she encompassed all these points together and linked it with sustainability. You see, previously we used to talk about gender equality from a social sciences perspective, and how can we be more inclusive? How can we have a better image of our organization that we're working in? But right now, it is one of the UN SDGs. So it is one of the development goals for gender equality. But not only that, when we started our research, and if we carry out normal literature review, we will find out that gender equality is linked to basically all the other development goals as well, directly or indirectly. So not only it's a goal on its own that the UN recommends and enhances the capacity of different countries to work on it, but it also indirectly impacts on all of the goals. So if we have a country where only 36% of females are working in the employment sector, we are missing out on the remaining talent that will be able to add value. I always tell my students to think about Zaha Hadid, who was an excellent architect from Iraq. So she moved to Europe and she designed buildings which no other person could have thought about. Now imagine if Zaha Hadid did not enter architecture, we would be missing out on so many, out of the box thinking in those beautiful architecture and buildings. So it is important, not only from construction perspective, but for the whole economies to grow, for the whole countries to move forward, to have a more inclusive work environment where we have at least equal opportunity for all genders to contribute in. Historically, the construction industry in the UK has faced a lot of challenges regarding underrepresentation of women and individuals from ethnic minorities. And women in particular have been underrepresented in a lot of different roles, especially senior leadership positions. And while we are talking today in 2024, the data suggests females are still representing about 36% in the senior leadership roles in the UK. So UK being one of the first world countries and very advanced and have been working with this domain for a very long time. So we can imagine the situation in the developing or underdeveloped countries around the world. So we have also been seeing a lot of issues in the news and in the research in education about gender pay gaps. There have been a lot of initiatives and campaigns around the world to address those issues. Different industry bodies, government initiatives, different quota programs have been tried and implemented. Unfortunately, many of them have failed. So there's a lot of room for improvement and work to be done on the skills and apprenticeships, ensuring diversity and leadership, and having more inclusive policies. So there has to be a will by the senior leadership, by the decision makers, by the policy makers to ensure that it is being communicated and rolled out to the level where people are actually being hired into the workforce.
Yeah. What interesting stats there, I think is looking at those stats and then looking at what we're going to be listening to later on during this podcast is, I'm sure we're going to see a bit of a seesaw effect, if you like, in terms of numbers. But one other thing that interests me is how we've gone into the gender side of diversity. I mean, there's so many aspects of diversity is what Professor Angela has told us there. Within the UK then, where are we in terms of gender equality?
Well, in the UK, there's approximately 66.8 million in the UK. 51% of us in the UK are female. However, only around 15.8% of female construction workers in the UK. There is a void, there's a gap there. There's there's something that's happening there, which particularly at a higher education level, where you do have more and more females entering into the industry, but that actually then not transitioning into the workplace is of growing concern. Looking at other statistics, the UK has about 18.3% ethnicity from ethnic minority background, but only 3.4% are in the construction industry.
Interesting.
The UK has 24% with a registered disability, but only 9.3% of the construction workforce register themselves as disabled. So there's alarming gaps between the population as a whole and where we are in construction. So why is that? That's the real question. You know, are people afraid, for example, from a disability point of view, to step out and speak forward and say to employers that they do suffer from disability, and in doing so, they don't get the support that they should be having? From an ethnicity and gender perspective, are we saying that we don't have enough role models in the industry? Is it all still male, pale and stale? What aren't we doing to support the growing number of females in higher education, then successfully transitioning and getting a very successful career in the industry? There are a lot of questions that, when you really start to deep dive, there are a lot of issues that really need to be looked at a lot more closely.
Yeah. Do you think it's something to do with our education? Because with anything that we do, we try to enforce it from, childhood through to the way, for when you graduate or finish school. So do you think it's an awareness gap within the education system just to do with construction, let alone because of the diversity aspect?
I think there are a number of different issues. Some are to do with education. Some are to do with structural and political situations, for example, where there is a gender pay gap. There's a lack of role models in the industry. There isn't that inclusive environment where, there's still a lot of male banter, for example, on construction sites that females may find it difficult to actually engage in or avoid. Working in a very dangerous environment. There are a lot of structural, as I said, political barriers that can be, and also social barriers that impact on women. But I think until we start really trying to understand them and how we can address this, are we actually going to see real dividends and changes in the industry to actually embrace more women? It is very pleasing at the undergraduate and postgraduate scale, the number of women entering into the profession in higher education, but like I mentioned before, is that transitioning, jumping up to a successful career? That's really where we need to tackle the challenge properly now.
Yeah. Now, the three of us on this podcast today are from diverse backgrounds, and have lived within the UK. What is it? Is it our kind of onerous? Is it up to us to kind of help others as well? Do we have a call to action to kind of promote the industry and promote kind of architecture or even sustainability or technology within our realms? Do you think it falls on us, or does it fall on everyone together, and we should all work together more as a community to kind of educate, make people more aware, almost kind of invite people into the industry? Is it up to us, or is it up to everyone? Does it have to be from the UN, as Dr. Mohammed Rana mentioned? Does it have to be from the top down, or can we work us as individual in this kind of disperse effect and kind of move it up to the UN? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is definitely a role that we all have to play. We cannot leave it to the UN alone or to the educators themselves. I was surprised by the research that we carried out in different countries, which we are going to talk about later. The work we have done in Jordan, Egypt, Brazil, Pakistan, we were surprised by the level of discrimination and the stereotypes that women faced. I come from a diverse background myself, so the discrimination starts from home. When we leave the airport from our country, arrive on the airport of a foreign country, we face discrimination on every step. And then it gets worse when it takes shape of in a more systemic way, where people are being discriminated in workplace when they are being hired. People are not given jobs because of their religious background, sometimes simply because they wear a scarf or not, or sometimes they have beard. We have seen it happening around us with colleagues and friends in different parts of the world. In the Western part of the world and in Middle East and every country it happens. So this is something which is quite deep-rooted and multifaceted problem. It cannot be fixed by temporary solutions. It cannot be fixed by some quota systems. Let's have 50% women in senior leadership roles in construction, or let's give them 50% jobs, even they deserve it or not. This is not how it is going to fix. We need, what we realized through research that this problem was much bigger than we initially thought. And at one point we felt helpless, saying, considering how big this challenge is, and we go to different parts of the world and it keeps getting worse and worse. So for example, in the UK and more developed part of the world, when we talk about discrimination, we talk about women not being given equal opportunities in senior leadership roles. But when we go towards more developing countries, we see the issue of violence and sexual harassment and so on. So one approach cannot fix all those issues. So we need more individually tailored approaches in different parts of the world to address this issue of diversity, equality, and gender equality in particular. Definitely what we require from the top level is the commitment from the leadership, who should endorse and promote a culture of equality within their organizations and set very clear expectations for diversity and inclusion at all levels of the hierarchy. But and also including things like flexible work arrangements, which we during the research found out was one of the biggest barriers for women to excel in their careers and have more inclusive policies at work. But what is really required is a comprehensive model of education and training, which starts from the grade 1. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but after research, we found out that these stereotypes and this, bantering about the other genders, it starts from the grade 1. And when children grow up into this environment and they keep hearing about these jokes and women cannot do this, girls can do that, girls cannot do. So if you grow up in such environment, you can imagine how it is going to end up. So there have to be training sessions to raise awareness about this unconscious bias and the importance of diversity and educate young students. And then this education keeps on going through the university level. I believe that is the only way if we push it from the top, from the senior leadership, from the policymakers, from the government levels, and then from the education perspective, it should start from home.
That's brilliant. So that's almost like working from the top down and from the bottom up, and you kind of meet somewhere in between. So from the authorities, but from home as well, from education from a young age. Sounds great.
I also think that what we found with the research is that, as Mohammed was saying, is that, it has to be contextualized with that particular area or region. Diversity or inclusion is not necessarily a singular problem, it's intersectional. So they may find that, there's a number of different issues that compound on that particular point. And what we found is that understanding problems in a particular context is so important. And we found it's not necessarily equality. What we're seeking is equity. And there's a big difference. It's not about gaining 50-50 quotas, as Mohammed said, about, maybe, getting 50-50 numbers of women or ethnic minorities into the built environment. That's not the goal. The goal is equity, so you can get equal access. We found very clearly in some cultures is that women actually don't want to enter certain professions or don't want senior management roles, for particular reasons that they want to care and nurture their children. And that's completely fine and completely acceptable. And we need to support people in their choices. And that's why we think it's so important that having that equity, that equal opportunity. So if you want to thrive and grow and progress your career, you are able to just alongside your colleague next to you. And I think that is really important.
Yeah, some really great points here, and it's quite insightful in terms of the equity side as well, making sure that we have that and not aiming for the 50-50 as well. So it's always important to see that. But one question does come to mind. I mean, what industry does have a 50-50? Maybe this isn't just the only industry that we're talking about here. Maybe, we're talking about construction industry, but what industry has something where it's equal? Maybe teaching, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, that's a question we can always research later on. Maybe that's another research topic, Angela. But anyway, we'll see. Okay, so in terms of, just to wrap up this kind of part of the podcast, we spoke about, doing things from the top down and from the bottom up, and kind of getting everyone involved, the community, no matter who you are, just trying to get everyone involved within the sphere of construction. But have you, any of you, and I know Dr. Mohammed Rana, you mentioned about, leaving the airport, and as soon as you get to the airport, you get some kind of discrimination, or you get some kind of feeling in the minority or something as you get to that airport. But have either of you, felt anything else, or someone said something to you in a meeting, or, when you're going somewhere, someone says something to you, or when you're part of, a global maybe conference or something, have either of you experienced something where you thought, this should not have been said, or that should not have been told, or someone should not have looked that way? Have you experienced anything like that?
I think I've been in a very lucky and privileged position, because I haven't had that many experiences, to be honest, being female and being a coloured female. I think when I started in the industry, I started working in academia many years ago, say about 30 years ago. I always used to get, I entered meetings just alongside my colleagues. And to be honest, in those days, there weren't many females around. Certainly there weren't many from the ethnic background. I used to always get asked, can we have some more milk? Or where's the milk? Where's the toilet? Etc. They always used to get really asked these really mundane questions that really, really irked me. But obviously, having worked my way up into the profession, become more and more known in the research and work that I do, I've luckily not been faced with such challenges. I know some of my colleagues, whether in the industry or in academia, are still facing issues, particularly with the gender pay gap, it's become apparent, or being pushed into what I call non-promotable roles. So, for example, like collecting cards, or doing awards, doing tasks that are really important to support an organisation, but that actually don't necessarily help them climb that career path. So if there's a collection for, somebody's leaving do, or, there's a form that needs filling in for this chartership that you need to apply for, is always left down to the women. If it's recruitment day, great, get the women involved, or get people from different backgrounds or disabilities involved. That's great, and they've had a lot of experience with that, whereas it's not always been helpful for their career, because they've actually getting inundated with these additional tasks that they actually can't concentrate on the role that they're doing and what they're paid to do directly. So that's been in my experience from colleagues and friends in the industry, really.
What a great insight. I mean, speaking about, the laborious tasks, or the tasks that, you just fall into the habit of doing, like you say, the forms and things like that, it's something we don't really think about. It just naturally happens. And it's quite scary, actually, that it naturally happens. We need to be more aware of that. Dr. Mohammed Rana, did you want to add to that as well? I can see you was passionate about that one, and you wanted to get in there.
Keeps getting interesting, no? Definitely. I think I want to answer both of your questions when you talked about some of the sectors which are more female dominated, and that links to the comment made by Angela, a woman being asked these questions, where these facilities are and so on. We were investigating as part of our research for one of the projects, and we realized that although it is a stereotype, but there has been a reason why males are made to think that women are associated with these sort of roles. And if you look at some of the statistics, for example, and you just asked that as well, for example, midwifery is 98% dominated by females. Childcare workers are 97% females. Domestic cleaners, helpers, they're 94%. Or the early childhood educators, it is 92% dominated by females. And all these sort of sectors like special education, psychologists, secretaries, they are 90% dominated by females. So, there's no gender equality there. They are dominated by females, and we're talking about 90 and 94%. So You see, when we get used to seeing more women, more females working in those positions, we automatically assume that, they would know about these things. This is what we found through research. I'm not condoning it or condemning it. This is just what we got from research. Now, coming back to the question about what we faced, I think it is going to be a very long discussion. But I'll tell you something interesting. In December 2023, me and Angela went to Egypt as part of research for our project on gender equality and inclusion and diversity. And the amount of time I was stopped at the airport by different people for no particular reason, both of us having British passports, and I was asked questions like, what is your first nationality? Or where were you born? So Ange came out and said, I think we need to have a separate project for yourself alone, talking about the discrimination that Pakistani men face at the airports. So sometimes it does get really bad, to be very honest. I do understand the duties that they have to perform at the airport in terms of security, but sometimes it is so visible, it is naked discrimination, you can clearly see it, which is not welcoming. When we talk about employment, it gets even worse because this is a place where we feel safe. And this is where we spend more time than at home, in many cases, to be very honest. So this is somewhere we feel we should be encouraged, where we should be valued. And if it gets the opposite, then things get really bad. I've had a colleague at my previous employer, she was from Vietnam, had a PhD from University of Birmingham, so a very highly educated person who was working on a European project. She was told by her project manager, who was also my project manager on another project, she was told that you have done an excellent work in putting all this data together and doing the analysis. However, we cannot take you to the conference because we need someone with a more British accent. And
wow.
She came crying to me, and I had absolutely no idea how to handle that situation. So things, very small comments like those can ruin lives of people. She took a break, she went on leave, and she came back after, was not the same person. There have been instances, there have been so many employment tribunal cases against employers where people were discriminated compared to their white counterparts or different races. So it is not something which is very uncommon. It is very common across the UK and across the world as well. But feeling it firsthand, it doesn't feel good. This is why probably I can relate more to these gender equality and equality diversity studies than other people.
I was just going to add to that actually is very interesting that you raise about accent, because it's not just the non-British speaking accents. Is that even if you look at all the different accents in the UK, some colleagues have experienced discrimination just because they've got a Scouse accent or a Geordie accent or a Brummie accent. And it's actually, it's probably a really under-researched area that, do you trust a lawyer or solicitor more who has, a plain English or with a Scouse accent or Brummie accent? And, this is, these are stereotypes that people actually believe in, and they don't actually fully credit an individual for the skills they gain and take it on face appearance. And it is a very under-researched area. So, discrimination impacts us all in one way or another.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the wider look on things. We need to look from within as well, isn't it? What an interesting first part of the podcast. I mean, we've spoken to a lot of things. We've got you raring now right at the end as well. Coming up next on Optimise Et al. Let's now move on to the area of research. I mean, you've both travelled together. You've done a lot of research within the area of within your organisation at the moment, within the areas of Egypt and Jordan. Why in particular those two countries? Why did you not choose like America or Canada or I don't know, maybe Saudi Arabia or somewhere like that?
It's a good question, and I am asked these questions every time I'm in one of those countries. The situation in the UK or Canada or America is no better than Middle East.
I think what's also really important to note is that we all of us as project partners really need to have an open mind. A great one for me was like when we went over to Jordan, which I visited the first time last year, is that seeing And speaking to women that have been really successful in senior career positions have been able to do that because they've had a really supportive family. Literally in Jordan, they're raised by a village.
I was quite surprised, to be honest. In Jordan, the gender equality statistics were better than UK in some aspects.
Now, I can sit here and give lots of different examples, really, but I think it's about changing perceptions. I think going into, I haven't been to, if I'm being all honestly, been to a Muslim country before. And, there's a lot of stereotypes of how women should behave, or, can they be leadership roles? Can they do this? Can they do that? And my stereotypes, my perceptions of what women completely changed.
And Professor Angela is leading on that. Is called Leveling Up STEM. And it is about towards achieving gender equality in the pathways to the higher education as well as employability.
We started on this journey as a gender equality, but we left leaving, actually, it's about equity, and it's about allowing free choice of what women or what people want as individuals.